My next guest to cap off Health Week is Louise Veveiros. Good morning to you, and thanks for joining me throughout your crazy schedule.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
I love it. I love the spritefulness, and you're up and you're ready to go. What are you doing? Are you in your gym right now, are you?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So this is my home gym, so I have all sorts of crazy things and bits and bobs in here.
Yeah. Is that always been the case that you've had a home gym, or is it something that you've kind of added to the pivot of COVID?
Interestingly enough, I think after I became a mum for the first time 10 years ago, I realised very soon that doing any kind of exercise became really inaccessible to me.
Yes.
So I think over the last decade, I've just built up more and more things at home. So yeah, like I just now it's kind of like a full gym. And I actually train people here and things. So
good. Well, that's convenient being a mum. And tell us a little bit about how you got involved in the fitness, I guess, industry or the health industry.
Yes, it's been a long time. It's certainly not my first career. Wow. I like to swap and change. I actually spent a whole decade in book publishing. I was actually a book editor.
Right.
Yeah, and then did a pivot in my sort of late 20s, early 30s with my own health, actually. Ran into some issues and found myself a trainer and got myself nice and healthy. And then that just started a whole different trajectory in my life.
Wow.
And then I ended up having kids, and then that changed everything for me again. So everything I thought about exercise and training just completely changed.
Wow.
Children. And that's kind of just weaved its way over the last kind of 10 years into what I do now.
So tell us a little bit about that. Yeah, I notice a lot of people that get into the fitness industry, generally speaking. Some of them do go to a school and just get their certificate, and you can tell those ones. But a lot of people are out there that are usually off tried experiences, and they get hooked into, it's almost like an endless world of information, which is quite addictive. What initially pulled you, what were the problems that you talked about that pulled you out of book publishing that you really had to look after yourself, if you don't mind talking about them?
No, that's fine. And you're right. You know, I think you come into the fitness industry a couple of different ways, and one of them is with personal experience, which is kind of where I ended up. Well, as you can imagine, book publishing, it was back in the day a fully fast-paced career. There were long hours, lots of coffee, lots of alcohol.
Yeah, right.
Parties and things like that, and you know, you can probably get away with it a little bit more in your early 20s, but by the time I got to my late 20s, basically I was putting on weight, I wasn't sleeping well, I just wasn't in a good place, and I thought, how did I get here? Because this is the thing, these things just creep up on me. They don't happen overnight. Like they just suddenly, you just look back and go, what? Like how did this happen? Yeah. I was not this person, and I was like, okay, let's find out what I need to do about this. And I think up until that stage, I'd probably taken my health a little bit for granted. And my body was saying, well, no, you kind of need to give me a little bit of love now. And we need to go on a journey together, which is what happened. And I had the fortunate experience of being with an amazing trainer who then became a mentor, and who then really encouraged me to get into the industry off the back of my own experience and things like that. And also at that time, I decided I wanted to have kids, and I realized there's a massive impact as to, you know, your standard of health and things like that on your fertility as women and as men. So I needed to get to the bottom of that. So it all kind of wove in together really beautifully, and I pivoted, left publishing, ended up starting a career in fitness, and then went and got pregnant, which is what I wanted to do in the first place. But then I was like, oh, I have to stop this career. But I didn't stop. I actually carried on. And that's how I got into the whole pregnancy postnatal space. And then also after my first child, I actually had really, really bad back pain. Now, I'd been fortunate enough to that stage in my life to not experience any kind of long-term pain issues. And I know a lot of people do suffer with that. So I was like, what's this? Like, why is my body not responding? Like, and I'd go and see some osteos, or I'd go and see a physio, and everyone would just kind of go, oh, you know, they weren't too sure. Like, they weren't too sure why I had these continuous back issues. So I had to keep going back to these people and it would last, the treatment would last a small amount of time. But then I found I was back in pain again. And I was like, there's just something not right. So I'm quite inquisitive and I like to do research. So I started Googling.
Cool.
Like get into Google and I started investigating, and I looked more and more into my personal situation, which is obviously a woman that had become pregnant and I have quite big babies. Like, my babies like to be big. They come out like 3-month-olds. So I started to look into it, and I actually found out after a lot of research that I had something called a diastasis recti, which is a abdominal separation.
Right.
Which is actually what happens to the majority of women. So I'd say 99.9% of women have some kind of abdominal separation during pregnancy. It's very, very normal. And it's a separation of the linea alba, which is just down here between here. And obviously, you've got to think about, when you're growing a baby, there's a lot of baby in there, and your body does these amazing things as a woman to accommodate the growing baby. And one of them is to stretch through the linea alba. But what happened with me was that it just the integrity of that didn't quite go back in the normal healing pattern after birth.
Right.
So, healing after birth can take anywhere up to, I'd say, probably 2 years after birth. A lot of people think it's just 6 weeks and then you're ready to go. That is such a myth, and I wish I could bust that myth. If I'm busting a myth, that is one of
Is that, are you saying women also don't know that?
A lot of women aren't advised that the 6-week checkup, which we're all told to get before we go back to exercise, that is just an insurance tick in the box. That doesn't mean that your body is ready to go back to any form of exercise. And that's why it's so important to work with someone who's qualified in the area, who knows what they're talking about, who knows postnatal bodies, and can help guide you in a really safe and effective way. And I just didn't have that. And again, this kind of nuance that I've ended up in was created through my own experience. Anyway, I found out I had this diastasis, and when I started working on healing that and getting my body nice and strong again, my back pain just disappeared.
Wow, that's the best.
I was like, then I was just down that rabbit hole. For the next 5 years, I was at physio conferences. I was everywhere I could go to find out about this situation. And then that wove into things like pelvic floor and all sorts of amazing things.
Wow.
So I've managed to work with some really incredible practitioners over the years to gain the knowledge and experience that I have now.
I'd imagine that would have opened up the Pandora's box of, well, what else don't we know? And let's admit that there's probably so many varying differences because every pregnancy is different. What other things were common in women that they didn't know, or that they, that were really causing some problems or needed to be addressed?
Well, the diastasis, the abdominal separation is a very big one. And the other one is pelvic floor. So pelvic floor health for women, you think about carrying and birthing babies takes this huge toll on the body.
Yeah.
And pelvic floor health is huge for women, but no one talks about it. Like you can go and birth a baby in a hospital and your doctor won't mention it at all. And they don't even check it at the 6-week check. And that should be one of the main structures. If you think about footy players, if they had like some kind of knee issue and ended up having like ACL repairs or something on their knees, they certainly wouldn't be going back to full training at 6 weeks.
Yeah, right,
There
of course.
There would be a long period of rehab and gradual strength building until they got back up to their game playing ability. And it's the same with women, but we're just not told that. We're told that any kind of issues around pelvic floor after birth is, air quote, normal. And it's not. It's very, very common. There's very, very common issues that women can experience with pelvic floor, but it's certainly not normal, and it's certainly not something that women have to put up with or do anything other than. So getting help with that is super important. And that isn't me. That is through women's health physios.
Right.
And they're different to physios as well. I think a lot of women don't understand that a women's health physio is not just a female physio, but they're actually a physio who's taken an extended course to specialize in pelvic health and all those other things after they've completed their physio stuff. So they're very, very specialized people, and every single woman who births a baby, even if it's their first baby, second baby, third baby, should always be told to see a women's health physio before they start training again.
This is crazy.
I know, and women aren't told this. We're not told this. And then we end up in all sorts of problems, or we stop exercising, which is one of the worst things that we could do, especially when we've got a young family and we really need to be healthy and strong to raise that family, raise our children.
I feel so sad for the women of the world that have battled through not just their own life of pushing out a human and expectations and the weight of being a woman, and there's already problems there, but then to be undiagnosed straight after pregnancy, that's sad. But things are changing?
Absolutely. And I've seen it change massively, especially in the last 5 years. There's so many people talking about like this now. There's loads of trainers making sure they're getting qualified. So as a personal trainer, I'm like the first person, often a woman in a postnatal, well, I'm their first port of call. If they don't know any of this information, then I'm the person that can share that with them. And that's why it's so important that trainers who work with women in those postnatal years, and I say years because I think, again, postnatal kind of gets rammed into, it's only women with babies who are 6 months old or younger. Right. I'm like, well, no, once you've had a baby, a woman's body is classified as postnatal for life. For life. That is it. You've switched. Your body has switched.
Your body's changed.
Yeah, your body has changed. Fundamentally, emotionally, physically, mentally, everything has changed when you become a mother. And so to say that postnatal is just the first 6 months is, that's another myth.
Wow.
It's just not the case.
And is that another glaring issue? Is that women try so hard to get everything back to what it was pre-birth because that's what they've told is achievable? They've got no real backup or information going. Your body's not going back to the same no matter how hard you try. You've changed.
Yeah, and I think that, it doesn't mean your body can't be stronger.
Yes,
it doesn't mean your body can't be different, but it will never be the same body as it was pre-birth. That body is gone, let it go. And this is the thing about women's bodies in general. Women and men, men, you're great, but you don't really change that much in life. Women, way more changes than you guys. Yeah. And, you go from puberty into like maidenhood, into motherhood, potentially into motherhood. Not all women obviously go into motherhood. But your body is still in a transitional period, and then we go and hit menopause. So women are this amazing, we're like caterpillars and butterflies. We can just morph and change, but we're not allowing ourselves to embrace those changes and respond to them. And that's where kind of my work is weaving over the last couple of years, is to get women to understand that life changes, they happen, and we can adapt and flow with them, or we can fight against them and pretend they're not happening. And that's when women get into trouble.
So are you saying that there could be women out there or that right now they could have had a pregnancy 15 years ago that are carrying some kind of inflection or injury or something that the doctors don't diagnose it properly, you have got no sprains, you just need to keep moving and change your diet, and they're being undiagnosed still to this day, even 20 years?
100%.
Wow.
And so, a lot of people, when they come to my classes, like originally they used to think it was just mums and bubs classes. And I hate that term. And I'm like, in my class the other day, I had my youngest female was 12 months old and my oldest was in her 60s, because I'm reaching out to all women and just saying, no, if a woman comes to me and their kid is like 8 years old and they think they don't need postnatal training, I'm like, we bust that myth straight away, because I'm like, I would start that woman with that 8-year-old child on the same program that I would start a woman with an 8-week-old.
Right.
They have to start at the same place. They have to build those foundations in that postnatal period in order to earn the right to exercise at a higher and different level. Now, obviously, I'm talking in very general terms, and some women respond and heal and their bodies respond differently to birth. But mostly and generally, what I'm saying, yeah, that's basically where we're at. Women are going undiagnosed, they're not being helped, they end up with pelvic floor problems. And I tell you what, they get worse as we go into menopause as well. So pelvic floor health is such a massive thing for women, and not enough of us talk about it. It's one of those taboo things, I think, as well. But again, that's changing.
I'm a newbie on the pelvic floor sentence. What is it?
The pelvic floor.
Yeah.
As in, so the pelvic floor is a whole load. So if you think into your pelvis, you've got the structure of your pelvis.
Yeah.
And within the structure of the pelvis, for women, it's different for men, because women, we have 3 holes.
Right. Yes.
You guys only have 2, we've got 3. So even then, like, there is I guess it's not I actually see it as our power, as our strength. But you could say that 3rd hole, it's another dynamic of potential weakness within that system. And you've got a whole load of muscles and fascia and tissue. And I'm kind of cradling my hands here because that's what it's like. It kind of brings everything together. And so when you think about women who, so women during childbirth, pregnancy, our hips expand. So all that fascia and tissue expands and does stuff. And then obviously when you have a vaginal birth, then the baby has to come down through all that muscle and tissue. So it stretches and it does all these amazing things with hormones and beautiful chemicals in our body. And the baby then can get out. But then the idea is that after a period of time, those muscles and tissue and fascia would repair themselves. But what can happen, and is very common, is obviously there can be some trauma during birth and things get ripped and teared. And sometimes they are broken and they are unable to be reattached. So if you think about muscles attaching to bones, sometimes that doesn't happen. And it doesn't necessarily mean, so often we can't feel our pelvic floor.
Right.
Like, you can kind of give yourself a little bit of a squeeze and go, oh, okay. And that generally is your pelvic floor. But most of us, you can't feel it. It's not like you can touch your hand and you can feel your hand. Or if I said, do your bicep and you can kind of bend your arm and touch your muscle. You can't really do that with your pelvic floor, which is why, as I say, women's health physios are so important, because they actually can help you understand how those muscles work. So obviously after birth, if you've experienced any kind of trauma and yet you can't feel it, then you may end up in a situation where you think, oh, okay, everything's fine, I'll go back to training. And then suddenly you end up with a situation where you either have leakage, so incontinence, or you can have sensations of bulging or tearing, which is basically, when going back to that mesh situation, that also holds in all your internals as well. So sometimes your bladder and things like that can actually fall out of the vagina. It sounds very dramatic, but it is kind of common. And there's so many things that women can do. So many things that women can do to help support that. And one of them is working with someone who understands exercise for women in that situation, because exercise can actually make it worse.
Yeah, right.
If you don't understand what you're doing. So what often happens with women, they go undiagnosed, they try some exercise, it doesn't feel great, it gives them these funny symptoms, and they then avoid it. And that's where we're getting into trouble with women, because it's so important as we age that we actually continue exercising and weight training more than anything else.
Wow, this is huge. We've got it's so good, and I'm a complete spectator here, obviously being a male and not knowing anything about most of this. But I've got a mum next door, and we've got some mums listening who we've got some questions pop up, which is great. Do pelvic floor exercises change during pre-menopause and different life stages?
No, pelvic floor exercises are pelvic floor exercises, but with every kind of exercise, it's nuanced. It depends what you need. And that's why the only person that can tell you what your exact exercises need to be for your pelvic floor is a women's health physio. I'm like really pumping this because those guys are really the only people. They often are called our eyes on the inside. They're the only people that can tell you and your trainer how your pelvic floor is responding to load and pressure. Right. And that's what we need to know. But one of the biggest access points to a lot of this stuff that I find, and we can maybe weave this in, is breath.
Yeah, great.
I work powerfully with women with breath. So if you actually think of your body as a canister, the bottom of your is the pelvic floor, and the top will be the diaphragm. And those two things actually work together really, really well if we can actually get our breath working well. The problem is that most people don't breathe well.
Well, do we breathe? I did a little bit of theatre years and years and years back, and a lot of the voice coaching was about breathing into your lower areas, which felt so weird. And it made me realize how restricted we breathe. Is that the same kind of things that you're dealing with?
Yeah. Basically, a lot of us are chest breathers, and we would just breathe. And our capacity for breath into our chest is probably only going to be about 15 to 20% of our actual lung capacity.
That's crazy.
And so if we're talking about that, you're talking about that creates stress within our body. And we go about our lives day in, day out, stressfully breathing like that. So when I work with people, we talk about belly breathing, which is what you were just referring to. And we try and draw the breath deeper down into the belly and into the sideways. So we're actually breathing.
Yes.
We think about a cylinder. We're trying to breathe into our back, into our side ribs, and into our belly. And just getting ourselves to do that actually is so good for the body, as long as we can do it through the nose. Right. Mouth breathers. I have a 7-year-old and he's a mouth breather.
Well, most of us are, aren't we, when we're sleeping? Most of us are?
Yeah, we can be. But again, that isn't I guess if you think about the human body as a machine, which I don't generally like to do, but if we go down that route, we say the human body is a machine. We were actually designed fully to breathe through our noses. Yeah. And eat and talk through our mouths, but not breathe through our mouths.
Right.
The only time you would breathe through your mouth is in really extreme exercise situations where you needed to kind of suck more oxygen in.
Right.
But mostly nose breathing. So we're actually built to do that. But over the years, we've all become these mouth breathers at night. Like,
yeah. Yeah. I heard something recently about, and this is great that hopefully you can tell us whether this is true or not. Is it true that because we don't breathe through our nose and the people that breathe through their mouth more, their nose actually, the muscles of their nose close in, and you can actually reopen them by starting to breathe through your nose again and train that muscle to be more open. Therefore, you can train yourself to breathe through your nose again?
Yeah. So basically, it's a kind of use it or lose it situation.
Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah, no, I don't know the exact science behind it, but our noses certainly become more congested and clogged up if we don't use them.
Yes.
Obviously, a lot of people suffer from sinuses and allergies and things like that. So nose breathing is really, really hard for those guys. Wow. But the majority of us can actually start breathing a little bit better through our noses. And if anybody's listening, I ask you to shut your mouths and start breathing. Do some really long breaths through your nose. And you can actually help it by just pressing your fingers into the side of your face and then lift up. Right. And it actually opens the nasal passages. It feels a bit weird. You know those nose strips you can get for snoring? It kind of does the same thing, but you're kind of pushing up and back and opening it up. And that can actually help you get more air into your nose. But this isn't new. None of this is new. You've got to think about all those yogis, thousands of
Yeah.
You know, like yogis, pranayama type breathing. It's all through our noses, but we're only starting to talk about it in 2021.
Yeah, that's whack. What's something, and I appreciate you got some things on today and probably keep moving. What are some things that people, and maybe even particular mothers, can do right now, not to self-diagnose and say they're fixed, but just to check their body, or what kind of breathing things could they start immediately to kind of, start getting their body working better? Obviously, going to see someone would be great.
Yeah, like going to see someone's like your top tier women's health physio. Look it up, Google it, go and see one, get an assessment. Right. Find yourself a trainer that actually knows postnatal bodies inside and out, and ask some questions. If they can't talk to you, if they can't say the words pelvic floor or incontinence to your face, they're not your trainer. You've got to get deep on this stuff, and you've got to get intimate. And sometimes trainers just find it confronting and it's no good. You've got to get in there and do it. And then the third thing, I guess, well, there's so many things. So getting into breath work, but this is generally for all humans. Yes. I would really start taking 10 deep breaths on waking, but try and make those breaths go through the nose. So sitting upright with an upright spine, breathing in nice and deeply through the nose, relax the shoulders, back and neck, and just try and breathe into the belly. If you can't do exhales through your nose and that just feels too confronting, then just doing a soft pursed lip exhale and breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth. Do it 10 times. Do it breakfast, lunch and dinner. And I tell you, it will change your life if you do it.
I believe that. Isn't it funny that even in wild circumstances, you're taught to just slow down and breathe, but then we don't do it any other time? It's insane.
I know, it's kind of great. I mean, I teach my kids this as well. So it's just another strategy for them dealing with life. All humans should be taught how to breathe again. We all need to be taught the basics of how to breathe again. And you can take it to whole different levels. I mean, obviously, you've got people now like, and lots of people will have heard of him, Wim Hof, who creates a whole kind of breathing, what do you call it? It's almost like a cult.
Yeah.
You know, and people are hearing about his work now. But I mean, Wim has been working for over 20 years doing this kind of stuff. And we're, again, only just hearing about this kind of thing now. But that works then. You can take nose breathing to a whole different level.
So how does your week look, and how's things been over the last few months? And have you got women that are being challenged more because they're sitting still more, or how's the landscape looking at the moment for you and
well, obviously, like having to go online in 2020, like everyone suddenly, actually, I think was really good for them, because suddenly they were thrown into doing home workouts. You couldn't get hold of equipment because it's sold out everywhere. Wow. Like everywhere sold out. You couldn't get hold of equipment. So you were stuck at home just doing the basics. And that's what I did with my women online. And it was truly incredible, like so successful.
Cool.
And it's actually really good. You know, online training for mums is amazing because you can just do it in your pajamas and the kids can be around and there's no stress. But obviously now we are starting to, I'm starting to train my clients again, and we're outside and we've got group training. So yeah, I mean, I just think it's funny because everyone's stressed, you know, like most people were like, oh, I couldn't get to the gym, or I couldn't do this in 2020. And my women are like, that's my life all the time. Like, it's really hard to train. So I think women were kind of perfectly set last year to just take it on the chin and just go on with it.
Yeah. I have got your website up in the chat there, and it's louiseveveiros.com.au. If you don't know how to spell the last part of the name, it is up there on the chat, but it's VIVEIROS.com.au. I've just got the website up here. What's Whispers of the Wild?
Oh, Whispers of the Wild, my baby.
Tell us a bit about that.
I've created a weekend for women where we get to explore all of this kind of breath work and the power of cold water immersion, as well as yoga, kettlebell strength training, self-defense. We also get to do some more kind of internal work, some journaling and things like that. And I wrapped it all together into this epic weekend, which unfortunately, due to last year, got postponed. But we're running again this year from the 16th to the 18th of April down near Apollo Bay. And it is going to be incredible. I have some amazing practitioners coming down. And yes, I will be doing an ice bath. There will be breath work. There's going to be some good stuff there. And it puts people off, but that is the stuff you need to lean into. That's the stuff you need to get into. And
you encourage any woman to seriously think about coming down to that, not just around pregnancy, pre, and everyone.
Absolutely. It doesn't matter whether you've had a kid or not had a kid. It doesn't matter whether you're 20 or you're 60. This is about women gathering together, connecting, finding out, getting more embodied with our bodies, and getting our minds and our bodies to start working together, and really kind of taking some sovereignty and ownership of what's going on here in our lives.
I've got one last question, and it's great. Shelley, one of the listeners, is saying, far out, I feel like I haven't been breathing after doing that little exercise. Crazy good. And yeah, it is amazing. Whenever I've been doing that lately, because I snore and I always wake up a bit clustered, and every now and then I just go, I think I need to do this. And it does feel good. I'm so glad you made that actually a real thing. What's the current structure of your classes, groups versus one-on-one? And are you taking new clients? Thanks, questions.
Yeah, so I So at the moment, yeah, I'm always taking new clients because I have a beautiful flow into my business of clients come in, they do the work they need to do, and then they move on. And that's great because I'm just passing on information, empowering women so that they can go off and do the exercise and training that they truly want to do. Like if you want to go off and climb Mount Everest, I can start you off, but I can't get you to the top. That's not my gig, right? You might have to find someone more specialized.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So at the moment, I'm running a summer holidays timetable, and I do work with a lot of mums. So kids are always welcome in my classes. I've always had a really open policy on that, and we work a really, really beautiful group. I actually only run small groups though, because I like my groups to be quite intimate and connected, and also we go down the rabbit hole a little bit with stuff. So I just want women to feel fully supported. So I do have I usually work a term timetable. So from February onwards, there's lots of different things. It's all on my Facebook page, Instagram, it's on my website, or you can just contact me directly. I take on a limited amount of personal training clients because, like I said, I do work quite closely and quite intimately with my women. So I've got a couple of spots there. But if any of that just resonates with you, just reach out. If you've got any questions, I'm more than happy. I do free 15-minute phone consults for women as well, just to kind of explore these things. And that's totally free.
That is so impressive, Louise. Thank you so much for your time. I think everyone's just going to be sitting there for the rest of this show, just with the radio on, hopefully, and just breathing and pulling their face apart.
Yeah, just breathe.
Breathing into your body.
Start fast. Keep it simple.
That is great. Louise, thank you so much for your time. You've been an impressive person to wrap up Health Week, and I appreciate you. And thanks, Fizz, for introducing me to Louise. And we'll have to speak to you again soon.
I'd love to. It's been wonderful to be here. Thank you.
That's all right. Have a good Friday and happy weekend.
See ya. Bye.